The Octopus Lady, everyone's favorite octopus-shaped marine biology YouTuber, has spent the last few years cultivating a wholesome and trustworthy reputation around herself. A particular point of pride for her was that she only shared facts with her viewers that were backed by peer-reviewed scientific papers. However, recent accusations against the Octopus Lady has revealed that she actively lied to her audience and intentionally spread disinformation. Let's get into it. Okay, that's all I got, and it was probably terrible. I tried watching some drama tea channels to get an idea of how they talk, but I only watched a few videos before I got bored. And like, no judgment here if you watch stuff like this, it's just, should I say it? It's just not my cup of tea. Oh, I shouldn't have said it. Hi, I'm the Octopus Lady. You're watching Alien Ocean, and let's talk about all the mistakes I've made in my videos today, shall we? Well, not all the mistakes. I don't know all the mistakes I've made. I'd have to rewatch all my videos to figure that out, and I don't want to do that. One, because I know most of the mistakes I've made are small, and getting nitpicky about my own work is a surefire way to make me lose confidence in myself, and then I'll completely stop making videos, and I don't think anyone wants that. And two, I'm pretty sure y'all will get bored pretty quick of watching me correct every single grammar error I've made or whatever. But when I do look over my catalog of videos, there are a few mistakes that really jump out at me, and I'd like to have an opportunity to just talk about them. And honestly, you know, I'd argue that not all of these are mistakes. Some of them are just a different perspective on something I talked about earlier, or they're just an update, something interesting I learned about a topic after I finished a video about it. So, with all that said, let's start off with 1. Toothed predators. In my sperm whale video, watch it here if you haven't already, I said that sperm whales are the largest toothed predators in the world, and then said, which is an odd phrase to me because it implies that there is a predator in the world that is larger than sperm whales but doesn't have teeth. And I can't think of any organisms like that. And there were many people in the comments who were like, blue whales are the largest non-toothed predators in the world. And at first, I didn't buy it. It was not bought. I did not purchase it. It was left sitting on a shelf in a store somewhere. That's how much I didn't buy it. Y'all get it. Y'all get the joke. Because to me, there were 3 characteristics an organism needed to have in order to be classified as a predator. The first one being that it had to be an animal. Things like plants couldn't be predators. They could be carnivorous, but they couldn't be predators. The second one being that its prey also had to be an animal. Obviously, animals that ate things like grass weren't predators. And then finally, there had to be some sort of hunting behavior involved, like chasing after prey or lying in wait to ambush them. Well, I guess there was a 4th characteristic too. I obviously thought that a predator needed to have teeth. And to be clear, these assumptions I had were based on my own feelings about what a predator should be and nothing else. Which is why when you're a scientist, you need to be very aware of your own biases when you're researching something. So, the blue whale is an animal, and the krill it eats is also an animal, but it doesn't hunt krill. Not like how other animals hunt their prey. Like, this is a predator. This? Not so much. But I was wrong. Blue whales are, in fact, predators. And I was deeply upset when I found this out, not because I was wrong, I know I'm going to be wrong sometimes, but because of the way in which I was wrong, I guess. It turns out that everything is a predator. Well, no, okay, that's an exaggeration, but apparently the definition of a predator in the scientific community is an organism that kills another organism for nutritional purposes. I know if you Google the definition of predator, it's going to say something different, but we don't use Google as a primary source on this channel. We use peer-reviewed scientific papers, so get out of the comments if you're typing something like that right now. But what that means is if a single-celled microbe eats another single-celled microbe, it's a predator. If a duck eats some algae, it's a predator. If you are a vegan and you eat a carrot, you are a predator. The only things that aren't predators are scavengers, parasites, and grazers or browsers. I'm not sure which is the correct term here. Some papers seem to define grazing as when an animal eats an entire plant and therefore is a form of predation. And by the way, this dugong is eating the whole seagrass, roots included. I know you can't really tell that from the video. While browsing is when an animal eats part of a plant, but not enough to kill it, so it's not a form of predation. But then other papers seem to choose one of these definitions and then use the 2 words interchangeably, and some papers define grazers as animals that eat grass and browsers as animals that eat leaves, and it doesn't have anything to do with whether or not they're killing the plant they're eating. But the point is, an animal like a giraffe eating some leaves off of a tree is not a predator because this doesn't kill the tree. Scavengers aren't considered predators because they're eating things that are already dead. And parasites, even though they're feeding off their host, don't usually kill their host. Unless they do, because a parasite can feed so much off of their host that they die. So is that parasite a predator now? And there are browsers, or whatever they're called, that can eat so much of a plant that it'll kill the plant. Like, you get enough giraffes on one tree, that tree's gonna die. So are all giraffes in league with this guy now, or are they only given the title of predator if they murder a tree first? And scavengers are eating things that are already dead, but they're also eating a bunch of, microbes and maybe even things like maggots when going to town on a corpse. And do you see why I don't like this definition? It's too big, it's too broad, and the edges of it are too fuzzy. But that is just my opinion. I'm sure others will disagree. And the point is, y'all were right. Blue whales are technically the largest predator in the world, but in a very, I guess, sort of way. 2. Lionfish venom. In my lionfish video, link to it up in the corner there if you want to check it out, I made the foolish mistake of admitting that I didn't understand something. Actually, that wasn't a foolish mistake, because I do that all the time in my videos, and usually no one gives me grief about it, but oh my god, I got so many comments from people after I said I didn't understand the difference between venom and poison. Let's look back at that clip really quickly, shall we? But there is a difference, supposedly, between being poisonous and being venomous. Basically, if you eat a toxic organism and it kills you, then it's considered poisonous. If it stabs you or bites you and then injects toxin into you, then it's venomous. So pufferfish are technically poisonous and lionfish are technically venomous. But can't you argue that a lot of venomous animals are also poisonous? Like, I'm pretty sure if I ate an entire king cobra, its venom would probably still kill me, right? So that would make it poisonous. Yes? No? Lionfish are venomous, whatever, moving on. So, as it has now been explained to me multiple times, I could actually eat an entire king cobra and be totally fine. Unlike poison, venom can't hurt you if you eat it, unless you have open wounds in your digestive system or something like that. It can only hurt you if it gets injected into your muscles or your bloodstream. That's the difference. I get it now, I get it. Y'all can stop telling me. I also talked in that video about how I thought it was weird that a bunch of different kinds of poisons all had names, but the venom of lionfish didn't. And I found out the reason why is because lionfish venom isn't just one molecule like these poisons are. It seems that lionfish venom is a very complicated compound that's mostly made up of different kinds of proteins. But I can't tell you much more than that for 2 reasons. 1, it seems like scientists themselves are struggling to figure out exactly which proteins make up lionfish venom. And 2, when they do figure out some of those proteins, this is how they publish their findings. And I don't know what any of this means. And I'm scared. But related to that, I saw a few comments telling me that the name of the venom in lionfish is ciguatoxin, and that's not true. You can get what's called ciguatera fish poisoning from lionfish, which is caused by ciguatoxin, but that poison is not produced by the lionfish. It's produced by the dinoflagellate Gambier discus, which gets eaten by organisms like snails, which get eaten by the lionfish, and the poison builds up in the lionfish's body. If we then eat that lionfish, then we get sick. Lionfish do not produce this toxin by themselves. Ciguatoxin is not the venom that gets injected into your body when you get stabbed by a lionfish. 3. Negative potassium ions. Oh my god, when this mistake was pointed out to me, I wanted to die. Okay, so in my pufferfish video, which you can watch here if you'd like, I talked about how nerves work. And the way they work involves 2 different kinds of ions moving in and out of a nerve cell, specifically sodium and potassium ions. And I said that sodium ions were positively charged, which was correct, and then said, for reasons I'm going to get to in a second, that potassium ions were negatively charged. Oh, they're not! They're positively charged too! Looking back on my research, I primarily used this video as my source on how nerves work, plus old memories from my college biology classes. The video says that when a nerve cell is full of potassium ions, it has a negative charge relative to the outside of the nerve cell. And for some reason, I interpreted that as our nerve cells have a negative charge when they're full of potassium ions because potassium ions are negatively charged. And when I compared that information to the vague woolly memories of my college classes, I thought to myself, that sounds about right. But it was wrong. And if I paid closer attention to the video, I might have been able to figure this out because it states that once all the sodium ions enter the cell and all the potassium ions leave, the electrical charge of the nerve cell becomes negative again. If I had followed the logic I used earlier, I maybe would have caught my mistake. And also, if I glanced at the periodic table for 2 seconds, I maybe would have caught my mistake then too. So again, I was wrong. Potassium ions are positively charged, not negatively charged. I'm sorry for messing that up. This is unquestionably the most mistakey mistake out of everything I talk about in this video. It's going to keep me up at night for the rest of my life. 4. My explanation of gender and transmedicalism. Before I begin, I just want to say that I am going to be talking about quote-unquote political topics in this section, so if you don't like that, skip ahead to this timestamp. Otherwise, let's talk about my clownfish video. In said video, I spent a lot of time talking about humans, and specifically about how gender is a social construct. If you haven't seen that video yet, link up in the corner or whatever, or if you need a little refresher, I started talking about gender and social constructs around the 4-minute and 30-second mark. So some people said I did a fine job talking about gender in that video, and others, like Ethel from the YouTube channel Essence of Thought, which I've linked to in the description, thought I could have been a little bit more nuanced. And I really liked Ethel's comment. I found her perspective to be very enlightening, and I'd like to read it to you all. That said, when I checked in with Ethel to see if she'd be cool with me doing that, she did ask me to say that she is not an authority on gender. Gender can be interpreted in many different ways, and this is just one way. So, Ethel says in her comment, quote, "Great video. Aw, thanks. Though I just want to add something, a bit of nuance as a trans person, if you will. The idea that gender is socially constructed is not a universally accepted belief among trans people, and is mostly promoted by cis organizations speaking on behalf of trans people. Problem is, they conflate a lot of different things labeled gender. I consider the big 4 genders to be the following. Gender identity, that innate sense of who we are, present in both trans and cis people. Gender expression, how we signal our gender to others. The more independent a person is, the more unique their gender expression may be. Gender norms/roles, how society expects certain genders to act, the roles it demands from us, typically male and female. Gender stereotypes, prejudicial beliefs about specific genders, typically male and female. And whilst I fully accept that the last 3 are socially constructed, when it comes to gender identity, which is what most people are talking about regarding trans people, then I'm not so sure. History is littered with the failed experiments of psychologists who tried to change a person's gender identity with not a single one having ever succeeded. To me, that suggests gender identity is not taught, but rather innate and immutable. And I just want to point out really quick, because I thought this was interesting, there is some evidence that the innateness and immutability of gender identity might have a biological or genetic component to it. For example, twin studies, which have shown that when one sibling from a pair of twins is transgender, the other sibling is way more likely to also be transgender if the twins are identical, and therefore have identical genetic backgrounds, compared to if they're fraternal. I just thought that was interesting and wanted to share. Anyway, to be clear, I am not forwarding the existence of a blue brain or a pink brain. That is to say, a person's gender identity dictates behavior and interests on a biological level. I'm merely positing that in the same way that our understanding of sexuality moved beyond the rainbow brain, in which all lesbians were butch and all gay men effeminate, the same might be true for trans people. That, for whatever reason, there is a part of us that has a strong sense of who we are in regards to our gender identity, free of additional burdens. Problem is, groups such as the Trevor Project don't differentiate between that deep-rooted psychological phenomenon and the socially constructed notions of gender, as seen in the quote you gave. To me, lumping them all together and letting expression, norms, and stereotypes define identity seems flawed, particularly as someone who prioritizes gender identity above the other 3. Also gonna interrupt here really quick to say that the Trevor Project didn't lump all these things together. I did! That was all me! I decided in my clownfish video that I was going to talk about gender only as a social construct, so I went looking for quotes from the Trevor Project that would back up that claim and ignored anything that wouldn't. Their actual stance on what gender is more in line with what Ethel is saying here. So the quote I gave was not a reflection of the Trevor Project, it was of me and my biases, which is why, as I said earlier, you gotta do your best to be aware of them. This is not so much as, aha, you were wrong. It is merely my way of suggesting a different way to look at things. There are many trans people who disagree with me on this. So yeah, that's Ethel's comment. Thanks again, Ethel, for taking the time to write it and for letting me share it with my audience. I did actually go looking for different perspectives on gender from other people from the trans community, but I didn't have much luck. I only seemed to find either definitions of gender that said it was only a social construct, like this one from the World Health Organization, which, by the way, completely fails to mention non-binary people, so gold star there, WHO. Or I would find extremely dense philosophical discussions from professors of queer studies that I did not understand. So if you're a trans or non-binary person and your perspective on gender is different from Ethel's, I genuinely would love to hear your thoughts on the matter as well. Moving on, another commenter, Aeronef, pointed out that my approach towards trans people in my video came off as transmedicalist. And if you're sensitive to this topic, that's totally understandable. Skip ahead to this timestamp. So, from my understanding, transmedicalism is the belief that a trans person isn't actually transgender unless they transition medically, which typically means being diagnosed with gender dysphoria, taking hormones, and getting surgery. This is a bad belief to have for a bunch of different reasons I can't get into right now. Here's an entire paper all about how much transmedicalism sucks if you want to learn more. But to list a few that Aaron F. pointed out, it makes transitioning sound like a mostly medical process when there's way more to it than just that, and it can make the trans identity sound like an illness. It's not good stuff. That said, after rewatching my video, I agree with Aeronef. I do think my approach was transmedicalist. Now, I wasn't saying things like, trans people who don't take hormones are counterfeit trans people. Beware! Keep them away from your blahages. But in my video, the only type of transitioning I talked about in any meaningful detail was medical. I do briefly mention social and legal transitioning near the end, but still, to members of my audience who don't know a lot about the trans community, they might walk away from my video thinking kind of like, well, a transmedicalist, that the only way a trans person can be trans is if they transition medically. While trans members of my audience who haven't, for whatever reason, gone through medical transitioning might be left feeling hurt and invalidated, and I apologize for that. So I just want to take this opportunity to say that while many trans people will pursue things like hormone replacement therapy and gender-affirming surgery, none of that is a requirement of being trans. There are other ways to transition that are just as valid, like social, which can involve things like changing your pronouns or the kinds of clothes you wear, or legal, like changing your name and or gender on your driver's license or other official government documents. And some trans people will mix and match. They'll do some of these things and not others. And some trans people won't do any of this stuff, either because they can't transition medically, socially, or legally, or they just don't want to. And they're just as trans as a person who does all of this stuff, because we don't gatekeep here in our alien ocean, right? Right. Oh, except for transphobes and other bigots. Your kind is still not welcomed on this channel. And to be clear, I'm not saying all this because I'm trying to not get canceled or anything dumb like that. My clownfish video came out months ago, and I'm still here. No one tried to cancel me then, and I'm not worried about anyone trying to cancel me now. I just thought that people had valid criticisms about my clownfish video, and I just wanted to address them. That's it. Oh, except there was one other thing that I wanted to do. You know that timestamp I linked at the beginning of this section? Watch where it actually goes. All science is political! Protect trans and intersex youth! Get wrecked, you apolitical cowards! 5. Marie Tharp and the Mid-Ocean Ridge. So in my previous video about hydrothermal vents, corner, click, watch, y'all know the drill, I talked about this massive underwater geological structure called the Mid-Ocean Ridge and how its discovery was a key factor in the formation of what's called the foundational theory of geology, plate tectonics. And I mentioned a lot of scientists who helped contribute to the discovery of the ridge, but there was one I completely missed. Marie Tharp. She was a geologist and a cartographer, and the maps she drew back in the 1950s were essential for figuring out plate tectonics. To back up a little bit, in my video, I described the Mid-Ocean Ridge as a mountain range, and that's not totally accurate. It is like a mountain range, except it has this little indent that runs along the entire crest or top of it, which we call a valley or a rift. I mean, I say little, but it's like 1 to 3 kilometers deep, which is about the size of the Grand Canyon, and don't think about that too much. Don't think about how the Mid-Ocean Ridge is so huge that a Grand Canyon-sized chunk can be removed from the top of it and it barely looks like an indent. Oh no, I'm thinking about it. Anyway, this rift is where magma oozes up from underneath the earth and forms new crust. This is where the sea floor is spreading apart. The rift in the Mid-Ocean Ridge is a key factor in explaining plate tectonics. Marie Tharp worked with another geologist, Bruce Heezen, throughout her entire career. Back in the 1950s, she was not allowed on any of the research vessels that were used to explore the ocean, so she had to stay behind while Brucey Boy went out to collect data about the ocean floor. He would then bring back absurd amounts of this data, which she would then interpret by herself because computers weren't a readily available thing yet, and then drew all the maps by hand. Now, I've seen some sources claim that her big discovery was the Mid-Ocean Ridge itself, which is mostly true, but I feel like when people hear that, they think that no one had any idea that the ridge existed before Marie Tharp discovered it, but other scientists knew about parts of the ridge, although they thought they were just individual mountain ranges. ranges. She was the one who discovered that they were all actually connected to each other and part of a giant globe-spanning mountain range. But more important than that, I think, is that she discovered the rift itself. The valley at the top of the mountain range, the place where sea floor spreading happens. When she showed her maps to Bruce, he was like, ugh, that looks too much like continental drift, which again, if you remember from my video, was a concept that was believed at the time to be nonsense. Heezen went on to further dismiss Tharp's ideas about the rift by saying it was, quote, girl talk. Girl talk. Girl talk, you know, like painting your nails your favorite color, and long, cute sweatshirts, and discovering a Grand Canyon-sized indent along the crest of the largest and longest mountain range on the planet that would ultimately cause an entire paradigm shift in the earth sciences. Hashtag JustGirlyThings. It took Heezen a full year before he finally believed what Tharp was showing him, and another 4 before he published her findings. And when he did, he took all her maps, all her research, and published them in articles that did not list her as one of the authors of it. And that was common practice back in the 1950s to leave out the names of women unpublished scientific papers, but my God, beyond that, this dude was a real piece of work. He'd give her a bunch of data to draw a map, so she would do that. But then he would come back, look at the map, erase it all, and tell her to do it again, because clearly whatever she drew was incorrect. So she'd recheck the data and redraw the map, and it would look exactly the same as the first one he erased, because she was right the first time, and he'd look at it again and erase it again and tell her to check the data again, and I don't know how she didn't murder this guy. And to add insult to injury, he was the one who unveiled the discovery of the rift to other geologists, and as a result, he got all the credit and praise. And for basically her entire career, Marie Tharp went ignored and unacknowledged. Fortunately, that's changed quite a bit in recent years. Late in her life, she received many awards that recognized her contributions to the field of geology, and she's been honored in multiple ways since her passing in 2006. From Google Doodles to children's storybooks to having a crater on the moon named after her. Geologists would think that was cool, right? I found this essay written by Marie Tharp herself about her time as a geologist and a cartographer. I've linked to it in the description if you'd like to check it out, along with a bunch of other really cool articles and resources about her. But one of the last things Tharp writes in that essay is, quote, I worked in the background for most of my career as a scientist, but I have absolutely no resentments. Well, even if you didn't have any resentments, Miss Tharp, they shouldn't have kept you in the background. You may have been a ne'er-do-well geologist, but you deserved better than that. And I'm sorry that I contributed to your being kept in the background by completely missing you in my research about the history of the hydrothermal vents. I hope this made up for it in some small way. So yeah, those were, I feel, the biggest mistakes I've made since I've started making YouTube videos. Are they going to be the only mistakes I'm ever gonna make? Oh, absolutely not. I'm gonna make so many more. I wouldn't be surprised if I made some mistakes in this video. But I think a big part of being a good science communicator isn't just doing solid research and presenting it well, it's also admitting when you're wrong and correcting mistakes or updating your audience when you learn new information. That said, if you want to watch some science communicators who I'm sure have never, ever, ever made a mistake in their life, ever, go check out the sponsor of this video, Nebula. Nebula is an independent streaming service owned and operated by creators like me, creators who value well-researched and well-made educational videos, like Real Science, Medlife Crisis, and Minute Physics. On Nebula, you can watch all their videos and mine without being interrupted by ads or sponsor reads. You can also get access to videos not available anywhere else, like Nebula Originals and Nebula Classes. Given that this video was all about making mistakes, I figured it was appropriate to check out Tom Nicholas's class, How to Research Like a PhD Student. I wasn't entirely sure how helpful it was going to be for me, because his videos aren't typically science related, but the class was still a bit of a game changer. Like, okay, so this video was originally not going to be about me fixing my previous mistakes. It was actually going to be on the topic related to animal behavior, but since I don't have a background in animal behavior, I didn't understand most of the papers I was reading for that topic, so I scrapped it. That is, until Tom mentioned in his class that the Oxford University Press has a series of books called Very Short Introductions that gives, well, very short introductions into a range of subjects. I thought to myself, they probably don't have a book about animal behavior, but it couldn't hurt to check, and it was literally on the homepage, y'all. So my video might be unscrapped now thanks to Tom and his class. Game changer! If you're interested in making educational videos of your own, or even if you're just a university student, I cannot recommend this class enough. If you sign up using my link in the description, you'll get 40% off annual plans, which is about $250 a month. Or, alternatively, this holiday season, we're offering lifetime memberships, which means you pay $300 once and you'll have access to Nebula forever. Seriously, no tricks or gimmicks or anything like that. Or, if you are a previously mentioned university student and are like, I can't afford $300, we're also offering gift cards for lifetime memberships. So, feel free to put that on your holiday wish list. But every time you sign up for a subscription to Nebula, you are directly supporting me and creators like me. So if any of this sounds appealing to you, you can sign up for Nebula using my link in the description. And with that, thanks for watching another episode of Alien Ocean. And special thanks to all my subscribers. All 100,000 of you. Around this same time last year, I had closer to 7,000 subscribers. So that's wild. This year has been wild. Anyway, feel free to go check out my Patreon if you'd like to get early access to my videos or your name in the beautiful credits. You can also follow me on Twitter if you want to see me be a goofball about marine biology on a more daily basis. And also be sure to like, share, and subscribe and all that. And until next time, this has been your friendly neighborhood octopus lady reminding you that you don't have to go into space to find aliens. By the way, when I was scrolling through the JustGirlyThings Instagram page, I found this, and no, I do not wish I lived in the 1950s. That is not hashtag relatable. This is not a hashtag JustGirlyThings.